So the first thing that we're going to actually talk about is the propane tank. It's very important that you use a vapor withdrawal propane tank, just like a barbecue grill. The difference between this and a liquid withdrawal propane tank, like you see with a fork truck, is in a liquid withdrawal, there's a steel stem that runs down to the bottom of the propane tank. And when you go to turn on your fork truck, it actually pulls liquid from the bottom of the propane tank, and that's what fuels the truck. That is not what you want to use for propane-fired heat tools. In a barbecue grill style tank, the stem only goes down about a quarter of the way, and what happens is when you bring this to get filled at a station, they only fill these tanks to about 80% capacity. The top 20% is left empty. And the reason is liquid propane will actually vaporize at any temperature warmer than minus 44 degrees Fahrenheit. So as soon as they put that liquid propane in here, that top 20% immediately vaporizes, and when you turn on your heat tool, you're pulling propane vapor from the tank to fuel the gun. If you use liquid withdrawal tanks, you're going to get liquid through the gun, it's going to clog it, you're going to get a very long orange type flame. It could be a very dangerous situation. So if they do mistakenly, and it happens a lot, use liquid withdrawal, you just tell them turn off the tank, purge the gas, you let the gun sit for a few hours, it'll eventually dry up, making sure blow compressed air through the front or back of the gun, and that should be at that point safe to use with a proper propane tank. You also will get a lot of questions. There's actually, all new propane tanks have two different style threads on it. There's an internal thread and there's also an external thread. The external thread you'll find usually used with barbecue grill style propane tanks, where they use that hand wheel and they utilize the external threads. Those regulators on barbecue grill style, on barbecue grills, those are low pressure regulators. We utilize, and with the propane fired handheld tools, we use high pressure regulators. And so it's different in that the threads are on the POL, and we utilize the inside threads of the tank. Everything is left-handed thread, so it's counterclockwise when it comes to gas, and that's how you install it. So you always get someone, eventually they'll ask, listen, I got my kit, I've got the regulator, it doesn't fit into the tank. They only see the external threads, tell them there's internal, and it'll work just fine. One of the things that we were talking about the other day was you'll occasionally find that the tanks will start getting some condensation and start freezing. And the reason why that's happening is as you begin using the propane tank and seeing the level of propane drop in the tank, obviously the pressure is dropping. And if you have a big project where you're shrink wrapping a large area, as that pressure begins to drop, I told you liquid propane will vaporize. It's a very, very cold gas. So if you have a cold outside morning that you're shrink wrapping and the level of propane is dropping, that liquid is starting to freeze from the inside out on the tank. And a couple of the methods that you can do to try to prevent the freezing is stop shrink wrapping for a few minutes so that the liquid can vaporize to the top of the tank. And the other thing is you can wrap a towel or put a fan on it. Those are different ways that you can prevent the tank from freezing up. But that should be a warning sign for you that the level of propane is dropping in the tank, and you should begin to start thinking about replacing the tank with a new one. So that's the differences between the various tanks that are out there. Now, a lot of people are intimidated by the intensity of the flame, because when you fire off our gun, 6 inches from the tip of the flame, that is, the flame temperature is 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's very intense. And if they burn holes in the film, they're an inexperienced shrink wrapper, they get intimidated by it, so they immediately go to the regulator and they lower the pressure, say down to 10 or 12 psi. That's the worst thing you can do to a propane-fired heat tool, is reduce the pressure, because all of these tools require pressure from the tank to push the flame outside the gun. So the lower the tank pressure as far as volume of propane goes, the regulator gauge starts dropping down. If they throttle down the regulator to 10 or 12 psi, the flame starts burning inside the gun, and then you start getting internal damage. So I've gone through and I've set up the tank, and I always recommend, I actually don't have it today, but I always recommend with any heat tool, let's say you're swapping out the tank for the first time, have a soapy water bottle around. So if you're swapping out a tank, especially if the POL and the hose are starting to get 3 or 4 years old, they can start wearing, and you want to ensure that you're getting a nice sound fit, and there aren't going to be any leaks. So when you turn on the tank, you're going to see this gauge slowly go up to the 22 psi, again because it's pressurizing. But also when you turn it on, that's the good time to leak test the POL, leak test the hose fitting, and leak test this. And I'm pretty sure I went through and tightened everything up good, so it should be all set. And I know, probably difficult to hear, but there was an audible click that came out of that regulator, and that means everything's pressurized.